First, the war has to be brought to an end. How it is brought to an end is not specified. It has to be brought to an end. Secondly, the resolution, or at least tentative resolution, as to what's going to happen in governance in the Gaza Strip has to be on the table. When those things are done, Bibi will fall. That's Dennis Ross, and I believe him. Second question he asked, and by the way, pop in with any kind of objection or screaming or yelling. I'm really all set to be attacked. The second thing is, could Israel have carried out its operation differently? A big question. And Dennis Ross, yes. Dennis Ross, yes. And the difference is, do you do what you're doing to achieve revenge, or do you have more significant, complicated, important goals in mind? When Israel began responding to what happened October 7th, it had revenge in mind. And no one is going to deny that that's reasonable. But revenge is not a 110-day war. What are your goals? What are your purposes? Could you have acted differently? Do you need the 2,000-pound bombs? A whole variety of things, questions. So his answer, could Israel have operated differently? Ross, yes. Steve Miller.
I just want to add context because I read a very interesting article last week about putting in context the killing of civilians in Gaza, which pointed out that Gaza calls everybody a civilian. But according to Israeli records at the time, it was 9,000 Hamas terrorists died and only 15,000 civilians. I mean, not only, that's horrible, in that number, which is a ratio of civilian to armed opponent of 1.5 to 1. In almost no war has that never been under 9 to 1, including the United States in World War II, and on and on. 1.5 to 1 is actually an incredibly low collateral damage number.
Okay, you're arguing not with Dennis Ross and not with me, but addressing another important question. Okay, but fine. Howard.
If you like Dennis Ross, and if you haven't seen it, Frontline put on a 2-hour documentary about the Gaza war. And I mean, to me, it looked like an infomercial for Dennis Ross. I mean, the two principal speakers were Diana Buto and Dennis Ross, but they had everybody in. Ariel Sharon, Netanyahu. I mean, in 2 hours you can put a lot of people, talking heads in. And basically, if I had to summarize it, it was we almost had a two-state solution, which would have been nirvana, but Arafat and Bibi wrecked it, or Arafat wrecked it. And then despite that, and despite Bibi's efforts to stop us, we almost had another agreement. But then Netanyahu came to power, and that bad person Netanyahu wrecked it. And unfortunately, we don't have nirvana now, but we're really smart people.
Or something. That was a little sarcastic.
That was my summary, but a lot of firsthand quotes from people, and especially from Diana Buto.
All that I'm trying to say is, choose your sources carefully. Check them out, trust them, and stick with them. The variety of ill-informed sources is very troubling. Next question for Dennis Ross. Are diplomatic relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia still possible? And here was a little bit of good news. Ross really believes yes. He really believes that the benefits that the Saudis are seeking will bring the Saudis back into a discussion with Israel about normalizing relationships. Now, while that's good news, you know, in having been with us for a few months, it's going to come at a very high price. Okay? And that high price might be what Dennis Ross figures will bring down the Bibi government. Because Bibi has made it in the past couple of weeks clear, and then more clear that there'll never be a two-state solution with a real separation into two national entities. He won't permit it. And by the way, I without drawing any invidious comparisons, before Donald Trump began running for president, he was a liberal on abortion. And he really was. And he would have been acceptable to many of us. But the moment he entered into a race which he felt was controlled by the conservatives, he became a conservative, ultra-conservative. The comparison with Bibi, very much the same. In his earlier days, Bibi might have been more prone to accept some form of compromise. But today, given the nature of his coalition, he accepts a compromise, he's dead. He's out. Okay? So it's just very interesting. Politicians make their choices. So, is it possible? Yes, it is possible. You might even ask, that's not Dennis Ross's question, is it likely as opposed to possible? And here it's Stanley Davids, not Dennis Ross. There is a major difference. But the likelihood of diplomatic relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia are really strong. And we're hearing more and more about this. Needless to say, we're not getting the inside dope, but politics, diplomacy, very leaky. And the leak tends to say there are conversations going on right now. But then again, the price will be stated, and Bibi will be, I think, unable to accept it. And then the government must fall. Next, Dennis Ross. Why can't Arab countries take in Gazan refugees? This was very interesting when he responded to that. He said, the Arabs carry as an open wound the significant departure of Palestinians, however you describe them, from what became the state of Israel in 1948. That is an open wound. They will never leave, despite all assurances. They will not leave the land because they saw their grandparents or great-grandparents leave the land in 1948 and found themselves unable to return. You know that the most frequent symbol of Palestinian resistance Now, we're not talking about the watermelon. We talked about the watermelon a little while ago. What is the most potent symbol of Palestinian resistance? A physical symbol. Any thoughts?
Dead
Okay,
Jews.
okay, wait. I see her, Sylvia.
You all seem to have a key of some sort that they say is the key to their ancestral home that they're going back to. I did read, by the way, that there's a market in used keys.
The a key, the key. I mean, sometimes people have big keys hanging on a living room wall. That doesn't mean that was the key that actually opened the door, but a key. And that key, symbolic of the reason why Gazans will not leave Gaza, even if Egypt would agree to take them, which it won't, or Jordan, which it won't, or Lebanon, which it won't. But it's moot. It's not even a question. And then Dennis Ross closed with what I felt to have been a magnificently important statement. In dealing with the Gaza war, Palestinians do not see Western press coverage. They don't see it. I don't mean they are blind themselves. They don't get it. They don't look at it. So when we have horrible pictures of October 7th, overwhelmingly, most Palestinians have never seen that, have never seen it. And therefore, they do what happens in American politics as well. If I didn't see it personally, I reject your claim that it happened. So Ross said Palestinians do not get the Western news coverage of what happened on October 7th. And most Israelis do not get Palestinian, Al Jazeera, whatever it is, news coverage. And so most Israelis do not see the impact of the bombing, et cetera, within Gaza. And that's to me, that just struck, wow, yeah. We're just assuming everyone has everything that we have and they're making bad decisions. The Palestinians mainly did not ever see images of October 7th. And most Israelis and many American Jews have not seen images of the Palestinian world. That's my end on Dennis Ross. So I'm going to pause for comment or reflection or angry rebuttal or personal insult, anything. Okay.
You look
Lauren,
great today, Rabbi.
Lauren, excuse me.
Sorry.
Lauren Creamer.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I disagree that the Palestinians haven't seen anything because everything was on Telegram, I think it's called, all over social media, and they had easy access to that. Many of them, I think a large number of them have seen that. And I also saw that much of it was screened outdoors in plazas and things for them to view.
Thank you. Thank you. Howard.
Apropos of nothing, Mahmoud Abbas, when I had the experience of being in a conference room with him when he gave a talk when I was working at the Rand Corporation about 30 years ago, and he talked about his key to the house in Haifa. And Yeah, afterward, it occurred to me that if I had had a weapon, I could have killed him.
I don't want to pursue that. Some people would say, Howard, I respect you way too much, that was a gratuitous comment. But I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to move on.
Those are two statements of facts. I'm not saying that I decided, yes, that would have been a good idea, but the thought did occur to me. And it's
Bless
true.
your heart. Bless your heart.
Okay.
In those days, there was no security.
Mm.
Hey, you have succeeded in stopping me from talking. Terrific. Okay. Donna.
I just want to say hello, everybody. I really didn't know, was not aware. Thank you for doing the study. Of what everyone doesn't know what's going on. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, we kind of we're very elite. We just let the few in, but it's good to have you. Any
Thank
other
you.
comment on the Dennis Ross material? Okay. All right. Good. I found it useful. My friend, John Rosoff, was invited to come to, was it Temple Isaiah? I think so. To give a talk to parents of older teenagers and college undergraduate kids on how to talk with them about what's going on in the Israel-Gaza war. He was invited to come because they're apparently, the invitation came accompanied by a statement that many of the 20-year-olds in the congregation have adopted the Palestinian narrative. And so John was invited to go there and talk with parents about how to handle 20-year-olds who accept the Palestinian narrative. I'm very glad I was not invited to do that, because apparently I don't do well with that question. And I have been told that by at least one grandchild. So John was asked, and he had 5 statements. 1, place family values over politics. A political dispute, no matter how deep and how serious, must not be allowed to rip family ties apart. So his comment to these parents, no matter what your kid's saying, don't cut off communication or say, oh, you're as stupid as ever, or anything helpful like that. Okay? So that's number 1. Value family over politics. Number 2, no quick responses. That is to say, whatever the 20-year-old or 18-year-old or 23-year-old brings to the table, don't be quick in responding. Learn to listen. Because John felt, I guess I feel, that even in some of the most outrageous statements, there are certain fragments of truth. Don't be quick to respond. So, for example, John talked about, we've mentioned it here, when Israel is accused of being the colonialist part of a colonialist oppressor world over against the good guys, don't jump in anger. If I would say to you, I believe that statement is a gross misrepresentation of historic truth, I'd say that to you. But if the 20-year-old says that Jews in general are white colonialist oppressors, don't jump in anger. Learn to listen and learn how to ask questions. Remember, the odds of your changing the mind of that person in a one-day conversation, pretty remote. But the need to establish respectful communication, extremely important. Steve.
I find it lamentable, but one of the things with these parents is I have to wonder what they did that enabled their children to reach this position. Obviously, there has been some educational failure in families where the children of Jewish parents who do not believe in that come to have those beliefs. And it's unfortunate, and we have a lot of making up to do, and I don't know the answer, but I do believe those parents are partly to blame.
Risa, you're rotating your head in a like side-to-side motion. Would you like to speak? Or do you like just moving your head back and forth? I don't.
It's not muted.
Okay, go for it.
Our kids get a lot of information outside of what we say in the family, and we teach them to question. So they're going to question us, as well as watching news and listening to professors in colleges, and I guess some peer conversations as well. But I would not take the blame for what my kids think or believe. I like to think that we brought them up in a Jewish atmosphere, and therefore they would lead strictly Jewish lives. But even that isn't 100% true.
I think that's a really important question. Before we get to Lauren, unless you want to respond to this question, is it to this question that Steve said blame the parents?
Yes.
Exaggeration. I said they had played a role. I did not say blame them. I'm just saying there was something in the upbringing that was lacking.
Okay, I prefer the that great line in the movie Blame It on Canada. I think blaming it on Canada would make sense. Lauren?
Yeah, I would disagree with Steve, and I would say that parents could do absolutely everything right, but right now TikTok and Instagram and Twitter are so, the influence that they have is so strong that I think that that's really where this is all coming from.
Lauren, I think that one of the realizations we have, and it's now a political question, is whether too many of the most excellent universities have managed to hire faculty which are progressive or in any event extreme left. And the students come into those classrooms for for math classes, chemistry classes. They come into those classes and they're meeting with professors Who will find ways to express political opinion in the middle of trying to figure out an algorithm or something?
Yeah, it's so strange because I didn't graduate all that long ago. I graduated in 07. And I truly don't recall experiencing anything like that. And it's, I don't know if this has really accelerated that quickly, and maybe it has. It's very possible that it really has accelerated that quickly. I don't remember that at all. And I studied, the liberal arts. I studied global studies and anthropology, cultural anthropology. So I wasn't even in STEM, where it's less likely. So if this has happened that quickly, that's really frightening.
Okay, thank you, Howard. Not hearing, Howard.
Sorry. My experience, and it's just my experience, is that this has been going on for 60 years. It's a process, the occupation of the Brandeis administration building in the late 1960s, and the efforts of people like Noam Chomsky. When my son Seth was going to school, he remarked to me about he was taking a class from some guy who wasn't even a professor at Harvard, but he was somehow giving a class, and in order to pass, it was on colonialism, and no matter how good your research paper was, if you gave the wrong answer, you were going to get a low grade. And it was a guy named Noam Chomsky. So Judith Butler, Noam Chomsky. Hamas now has a big new propaganda effort I just read about and I think and the Houthis also, and I forget which one of them, but they one of the big things they were urging everyone to read Noam Chomsky. So the occupation of the university by ultra left people has been going on for a long, long time.
One of the interesting things, if you look up Noam Chomsky, his real name is Noam Chomsky, right? But he is Noam Chomsky. Fine. His father was a seriously respected Hebraic and Judaic scholar. And Noam Chomsky is about as far from where his father would be as distance permits. And it's kind of like, how the hell? They dropped him on his head as a baby. What happened? But it happened. Ray. Ray,
sorry, it took me a moment to find the unmute. I appreciate your patience. I was surprised to find I'm no longer a college student, despite my roguish youthful looks. I was pained to find I do teach a few classes as an adjunct instructor, and one of the campuses is organized. There's an adjuncts union, and I was horrified, and I'm still kind of experiencing post-traumatic stress. I'm not really sure what to do about it. Completely on their own, the officers of my union in December proudly sent around an email message with the statement that they had unilaterally taken, purportedly because they represent us. They basically said as much, that they're our elected officials, calling not only for an Israeli ceasefire, but characterizing, it was a disingenuous thing, characterizing Israel in, at best, extremely subjective and narrow reading languages, and at worst, sensationally condemnatory languages that is very far outside the scope of what I even believe a labor union should be getting their business in, much less think that they can do and feel like I can comfortably feel that they are my advocates when they're dabbling in armchair international affairs. And I'm wounded by this. I'm curious, if anyone has any take on what to do about this. I'm terrified to push back, honestly, because I feel that the climate is so confidently this brand of far left that we're all friends in this room and we know that Israel is a monster, that I'm terrified that even by being the squeaky wheel and saying we shouldn't really be in the business of making these statements, that I'm going to be punished even more, and on top of everything else, be alienated within the union that's supposed to represent me. So I'm beside myself. I do not know what to do with this. Rabbi, I did actually mean to write you an email and forward this to you to get your opinion on it, because I am heartbroken and flummoxed. And so I just put the question to the group if anyone has experienced something similar or has thoughts on this.
Okay, but do me a favor, don't send a message to Howard Weisberg. I'm not confident as to what his advice would be. So, you know, we're not into promoting assassination. By the way, it's interesting that you mentioned this today, Ray, because today the United Auto Workers endorsed Joe Biden. And in that endorsement revealed, yes, the leadership endorsed, but there were strong disagreements over Biden on the Middle East and his support of Israel. Okay? So, but I'm just saying, it's not your problem alone. It functions that way. Brad?
Well, I just want to comment again on what's happening in the classroom. And, you know, I've taken as a senior auditor 2 classes a quarter for the last 10 years at both UCLA and at the University of Colorado. And I have never heard a political statement coming from a teacher in all of my experiences. I don't doubt that this may occur, but I think it's very overstated.
Okay, the only way I can respond to that is that there are increasing numbers of students who have testified in a different direction. And we'll have to let that sit. Thank you for the comment. Remember, what we're talking about is John Rossoff. How do you talk to our kids and then, or 20-year-olds or 25-year-olds, remembering that for those in university, it is very likely, especially in the elite universities, that they are encountering a toxic anti-Zionist, if not anti-Semitic climate today. I want to go on. John said, get yourselves 2 or 3 trusted news sources. And I love what he said, forget the rest. Please don't
Rabbi,
send. Yes.
I just want to say, I understand those comments about the toxic environment, but that doesn't translate into what's actually happening in the classroom. That's the distinction I'm making.
Okay, and all I was saying is that students are testifying because I actually have been told by students things that happen in a classroom. Okay, so it's there. The extent is not clear. Find 2 or 3 trusted news sources, and for God's sake, stop sending me reprints from exotic news sources who control at least 1% of the conversation. Okay, Howard.
I think several of the people in this chat know my grandson, and I'm very happy to announce that to say that after one semester at school at college, that he's has very good ideas about Israel and very sensible and nothing at all like what we're talking about. But he doesn't go to Harvard either.
Okay, I'm just going to say you've got good luck. Keep it going.
Oh,
Keep
well,
it.
probably parenting too, I think, from his parents.
Yeah. Then John offered a metaphor. Both the Israel Jews are colonialist oppressors. White Jews are the worst. And if it's white male Jews, they deserve to be wiped out. Okay, those things, John said, both groups are looking at the same situation through a telescope, but different ends of the telescope. And they're seeing the same facts refracted differently. And that makes serious conversation difficult, and we should know. And the last thing, because John is a retired senior rabbi of a major congregation, support Israel studies for adults in your congregation. I kind of smiled at that. Like we pause for a message from our sponsor. Okay, so that there should be study. We're going to move on unless anyone has anything new to say about John's perspective.
Yeah, I have a question. So number one was value family over politics. Number two, don't be quick to respond. Did I miss number three? Or was number three support Israel studies?
Okay, value family over politics, learn to listen, don't respond quickly, and get yourself 2 or 3 trusted news sources. We are looking at the same phenomenon from different ends of a telescope, and have Israel studies in the congregation. Now, I'm going to go to a today problem. 21 Israeli soldiers were killed while clearing a building. Happened this week. What does it mean they were clearing a building? The Israelis are attempting to push back buildings from the Gaza-Israel border. You can't push a building back, you level it. They are leveling buildings on both sides of the Gaza-Israel border. And it's self-evident what's going on, so that tunnels can't be built under, through, and up. The buildings couldn't do that. And so that the buildings couldn't house, conceal an incoming terrorist assault. I mean, that's all very clear. What happened is that the Israeli soldiers were inside a building preparing a safe zone. It says that it was, I don't know what this means because I never did learn, 600 meters from an Israeli kibbutz. How far is that? Can you give me in real numbers? What's 600 meters?
600 yards.
100 feet.
600 yards?
Yards.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, that's approximately enough. So they were trying to do this. They were flattening buildings close to a kibbutz. The soldiers were placing explosives ready to clear the building when Hamas launched a missile at the building and all the explosives went off. 21 Israeli soldiers were killed. And the news reference says the soldiers who died were Christian, Jewish, Muslim, religious, secular, every one of them a reservist trying to defend Israel. That just, when I first read 21 in a building that collapsed on them, I could not bring myself to understand How did the engineers allow the building collapse on them? And then the information came that there was a missile strike on the explosives and everything blew and 21 died. So that explains that. Now, because I am so attuned to keeping you happy, despite our topic, I'd like to report Congregation Rodef Sholem on the Upper West Side of New York unveiled a 35-foot long challah that they hope will break a world record. Okay. So while all of this is going on, a 35-foot challah. Now, what's interesting about the challah, referred to in the news release as a gargantuan loaf. A gargantuan loaf. That's nice. Was baked together with the Jewish Federation of North America and the Orthodox Union and the Reform Congregation.
Mm.
I mean, we're entitled to a little bit of good news, even if it's only challah, right? So they did this. It was, in case you're interested, braided in Borough Park.
Wow.
So you know that challah is as kosher could be, right? Okay.
I want to know about the oven.
That was my question.
I want a piece of it.
Please. This was made in honor of Shabbat of Love, a Jewish Federation North America initiative that took place on January 19th. The Orthodox Union and 250 other partner organizations helped organize and host thousands of Shabbat dinners.
Where did they find an oven big enough?
I gotta have to believe it doesn't say. Stanley the Cynic would be looking for a little Elmer's glue. I mean, somehow those chalot pieces had to be put together, but there's no way that they could be baked in a single oven. Risa, fix me.
Doesn't have to be straight. It have that length, and it could be curved or spiraled, and it would still have the same length.
I have, my dear, a picture of a straight challah 35 feet long.
In your head or on the paper?
No, gee.
On the paper, they showed it as a straight challah.
Yeah, it's a straight challah, Risa, honestly. Okay. Now, we're going to move on. I thought that was the fact that the Orthodox Union and the Reform Movement and the Jewish Federation got together on a project like that left me with a good feeling, and I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep my good feeling. Next, question was asked now in surveys across Israel. What do Israelis think of the Palestinian suffering? The survey was serious. It was good. Serious means that it sampled wide variety of populations, communities, and got a decent number for a reasonable survey. I have the result of that survey, not in numbers, kind of a general result. But I'd love if some couple, three people want to raise your hands and think what the survey revealed about Israeli responses to Palestinian suffering. Anyone? I mean, I was not have been, I mean, anything we offer is a guess, but what do you think? Anything, Howard?
Okay.
There's a series of videos on YouTube that have been going on for years of a guy doing man on the street interviews in Israel and in West Bank. And based on that, I would say a lot of Israelis would say, well, they should have their land, and they should live and we should live, and they're people just like we are.
Thank you. Any other, Steve?
I agree that I think they are very upset about the loss of Palestinian lives, but I think even a lot of ultra liberals have moved a little bit to the left and said, we've got to protect our country. I don't like my kids getting killed in wars. And I think the liberals in Israel some of them are having the toughest time.
Okay, anyone else want to offer a guess before I do a simple unveiling of what the survey revealed?
May I, Rabbi?
Please.
I think that everybody wants peace. Most everybody wants to live their own land and coexist. And this is all nonsense. It's got to stop. And it can't keep going on. I think that everybody's tired of it.
Okay. We're going to stop there. The results were astonishing to the survey taker makers. While reflecting humanitarian concern for all of the civilians, and Steve earlier on separated, we know that the number of deaths include fighters as well as civilians. We understand that. But knowing and caring that many civilians, many women, many children, many hospitalized people have died, and all of that, having said that we deeply regret this loss of life and this pain, the overwhelming majority response to the survey was they shouldn't have started the war. They, the Palestinians. That the pain and the suffering is a product of choices that Hamas and the leadership of the Gaza community made. They made the choices. They're paying the price. We are very sad for civilian casualties, but don't ask us to feel sorry for what they made us do.
Right on, Rabbi.
Interesting, right? Now, Zach's is upset. Okay. You want to throw a bottle at the screen? You can do all kinds of things. I was surprised at the response. By the way, it's also true that many Israelis now want a cessation of fighting and a release of the prisoners. And they're willing to accept the fact that this means that Hamas will not be totally destroyed. So it's a little bit in both directions. Israelis today express a much stronger willingness to stop the fighting short of absolute removal of Hamas. Risa.
I think we have to go back to Golda Meir. I think the Israelis agree with her that the worst part of war, that our kids have to be killing other people.
Yeah, and she didn't say they shouldn't be.
No, she didn't. She said it has to happen, but you have to be aware of it.
Lauren? Where are you, Lauren? Lauren. I can't find Lauren. Okay, so you posted something. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, I've been following some Israelis and conversing with them on Instagram, and they're they're not saying that they want to stop. In fact, after the soldiers died the other day, the 21, they're more convinced that things should continue until Hamas is eradicated, and they don't want to stop for the hostages. They don't want the soldiers, not just the 21, but all of them, to have died in vain. They're mad at Biden and the US interference. They're mad that the aid is coming in because the aid is helping Hamas. And they're more resolute that they want Hamas done.
Lauren, I think I'm going to toss in on what you said. A growing feeling in Israel, if we can't prove that the hostages are getting adequate medical coverage, then we shouldn't be allowing medical material entering into Gaza. That's a very strong feeling that people are saying we cannot let these medical supplies into Gaza if medical care is not being extended to our hostages. Now, that's not the government position, and maybe it's not a majority position, but boy, it's an angrily expressed position. Then, some of you know the name Jerry Nadler. Jerry Nadler, we knew when we were living in Manhattan. Jerry Nadler is a New York Democrat and a member of the House of Representatives, and he has been on so many issues where the Jewish community of New York would feel comfortable for him to be. Jerry Nadler, a good guy in many ways. He is considered to be the dean of the Congressional Jewish Caucus. He has now publicly refused to endorse a resolution condemning anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism as a single linked phenomenon. People are shocked at Jerry Nadler. His feeling is that the Jewish community is too willing to use charges of anti-Semitism, in his words, so cynically that everything they oppose is clearly labeled anti-Semitic. And he wants there to be a way to keep anti-Semitism condemned, anti-Israel condemned, without making the two a linked phenomenon. He calls it gross overreach. The last thing that I want to mention today, we have a minute left, not enough to deal with this, but Risa has been talking about this a lot with me, and now, Risa, it's showing up in the press. Those prisoners, those hostages, if they, God willing, come home, are going to be dramatically different than the people they once were. The grieving families of all those who died on October 7th are going to need a lifetime of psychiatric and psychological care and support. Do not believe that when the war ends, that the war ends. The damage, I mean, I can't even imagine. You're a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old kid, kidnapped, watching your parents killed, and then put into a tunnel or whatever, returned home. That's a totally different human being. And his or her life will be totally other than where it was headed before October 7th. And so, crucial insights for caring for the members of the community settlements greatly affected by Hamas. These communities now are focused on the psychological state of children and youth and the need to provide enhanced security, because these kids will never again really feel secure. That's another piece of what's going on. Thank you for today. I am pleased that slowly, this group is growing. Invite people to join us. And I thank you for the quality of the conversation, except when you disagree with me. But you know, we can handle that. Folks, thank you all very, very much. A good,
Thank you, Rabbi.
good
Thank
discussion.
you very much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Love you.
And you.
Love everybody. See ya. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye.
Shalom.